Welcome to Journey to Service. My name is William Laddick, and joining me once again today, Randall Kaiser. Randall, how are you?
I'm wonderful, William. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. I was just telling you before I started that I went on a nice casual walk today and enjoyed the beach. It was kind of a cool day in Capilano City in Vancouver, for those of you who don't know what Capilano City is. Um, um, and sat next to a guy who was preaching about the Bible, and I never do that. And so I decided today I was going to do that, and I was going to come in from a place of, just being a listener and friendly and not judging, not trying to say he's wrong or I'm wrong or anything like that. And it was pleasant. And then the sun beat down on us too, which was beautiful because the morning was cool and cloudy, and it was a good day. What about yours? What was your day like today?
Well, pretty cool. I'm getting used to this idea that everything that I've thought about in the past is happening now, right? And that's very interesting. So this guy, you said that he was a Christian guy, right?
Yeah,
That you ran
Christian,
into?
yes. He doesn't have a religion per se, but definitely Christian.
Yeah. It's interesting because I had a little discussion with a friend the other day, and I've kind of come down on some of these organizations, let's call it, government included, but another one is the good old Vatican, right? And I've said some stuff, and I actually posted a thing where Batman was arresting the Pope, or Spider-Man, I think it was, or something like that. It was just kind of a meme, right? And this guy said, well, that's not really the truth, And I thought, okay, wait a minute here. I'm going to open myself to this discussion, because I've really had a challenge with what's gone on in that, it's a sector of the religion, right? Christianity, when we're talking about the Catholic Church. So it's interesting how I, quickly got on the bandwagon with this whole Pope thing, but I don't have any idea what the Pope actually is thinking. I even went to a movie, I think it was last winter or year and a half ago already, when and it was about the Pope and how he was really speaking publicly about what he wants on the earth and stuff. And I was actually quite impressed with the movie. So I think I got a little bit of a taste of listen, don't be so judgmental of people because you don't know, So I think that's where I was going with that one. I found it interesting that we were talking about Christianity. So anyway, that was one little experience.
Yeah, I've learned over time, and I have to remind myself of this quite often. I mean, once in a while I might see something on a video or something on YouTube or whatever, and I'll see someone on there talking, and I'll just spit out something like a judgment or a harsh criticism or whatever. I don't do that with a person, but then I'll often catch myself right away afterwards and just say, wait a minute, you don't know his whole story, you don't know his whole background, you don't know what he's learned, and you never will. You'll never have the exact experience that other man, woman, person, being, extraterrestrial entity, whatever you want to call that, has gone through. And so there's no way that you can completely understand the context in which they were in. And I've learned that judgments really they're just kind of like a wind. They just come and they go. And unless you put some energy into it, they're of no use. So not to say that I'm trying to stop myself from judging. It just happens kind of naturally anyways. But I have noticed that, especially in the past year, is that I just stop myself from going down that rabbit hole. So anyway, I wanted to ask you how things are going in the mayoralty race. Any news or registration, anything like that? Anything going on?
We're kind of in that Groundhog Day. Like every day I wake up and I'm thinking, okay, today's going to be the day that we get into the official running, but obviously I'm not quite ready yet. Like I'm taking this very seriously on the side of co-creation, so I'm, as we were just talking, like I'm manifesting this reality, or I've manifested this reality, and now it's happening, right? So is there something that I could change or do differently that would speed that up? Well, I don't know. Like, it's interesting to me. I ask myself that, like, what is it that's holding up this flow of funding that will allow me to get into that candidacy? I don't want to use the word race, because I've said many times, like, I don't consider what I'm doing here a competitive situation or a race for the mayoralty seat. I think of it as more of me coming to the community to expose what I feel to be truth in the moment, like, as far as what's going on this earth. So am I doing that properly? Like, am I exposing? Good. I'm glad we got into this one today. This is going to be a very unique conversation.
Yes.
Because, I feel as if I'm accepting what is, but then there's other days when I'm like, wait a minute here, like, you're kind of still fighting this situation, or, getting drawn into a battle of some kind, So I know that I scroll through alternative media and I see all kinds of stuff on there that is very much in the battle zone, and I'll read a little bit of it and I think, am I wasting my time by doing that, or am I plugging something else into my head with a little bit more programming? So I want to just go completely outside of it, deal with the community that I'm dealing with and the people that I'm dealing with on a very authentic level. But I know I get, tempted even by some of those people to get drawn back into the fight, so to speak, right?
It can be very easy to do, very, very easy to do. And I know exactly of what you were speaking. Yeah, I agree with you. I have a feeling this is going to be a very interesting conversation, because it ties very much in. Like, just before we started recording, for the audience's benefit, I said I didn't do any homework for today's show, but I had one thing in my mind about something that happened to me yesterday that I wanted to share and see where it leads us. And it ties in beautifully to what you were just saying about, the competition aspect of the mayoralty race, or not race, as the case may be. But yesterday morning, I decided to sit and do a quiet meditation, which I try to do daily. Yesterday's meditation was for 2 hours. That's pretty typical for me. I like to go anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. And I was, you came up in my meditation. You were in my thoughts, and I'm going, I think it just came out of the question of, what am I going to talk about with Randy tomorrow in the show? And I thought, well, you know what? I could talk about the challenge I'm having right now with my business and the school board, because I was thinking, I love to blame the school board or the government for, the lockdowns and all the things that have happened since the lockdowns. But then something else popped into my head, which was really kind of interesting, because I said, the thought was, there's no one to blame, and it's all perfect. It's all meant to teach us something. So we're getting into the little bit of the spiritual minded here, folks, so bear with us. But then a question came up, and I said, I realized in that moment also that everything that we have been, that we've grown up with, and to me, it felt like everything, let's put it that way. I won't make that as an absolute fact, but in my experience, it felt like all of a sudden, everything that I was looking at, thinking back and reflecting on my life, everything was a conditioning toward what we're going through now. And I was thinking even about sports, like, because I run a volleyball league, right? So I was thinking about, even sports is competitive. And what is competition? Competition is always about one person against another person or one team against another team, but the emphasis is about beating the other person. And even so, sports is a lot of it is about, you know, coming up on top. Education, same thing, coming up on top. Who's the smartest student? The smartest students were always the rewarded ones, always the glorified ones. And I asked myself the question, what could I do with the sport of volleyball that would be different, that wouldn't be about competition and still keep the fun of the sport? And so what came to my mind was creating what I enjoy about the sport is creating a sport where you're always playing a game where the competition level is very, very close, so that's the most enjoyable play, is when you're competing against someone that's about your level and you don't know who's going to win that next point. And so we go back and forth, and we always come down to the wire. So I was thinking, you know, if we could create it where there weren't set teams, like you come in with a team, that'd be your people, so to speak. But after every game, both team captains would reevaluate their situation and they would say, okay, we won that game quite, you know, lopsided. So what do you feel we could do to swap players to balance it out a bit more, and then play it that way, and then reevaluate again each game and rebalance it and rebalance. By the end of the night, you're going to have as close as you can possibly get between the two teams, and everyone else has started working together with the new people. And then I had other thoughts. This story's getting long, so I will give you a chance to reply. But I was thinking how this would apply to transition into a new paradigm as a leader of a city, or the mayor of the city. I won't even call it leader, because I don't think you'll even like being called a leader, but just being part of, you know, that whole, I don't know what to call it. I'll call it a leadership group because I can't think of a better word. But can you see where I'm going with this? And do you have any thoughts about how what I just shared might come into running a city or being part of a city leadership?
Wow, that's good. You know, like what came to mind was the word catalyst. Okay. So I've always fancied myself in the banking world that I function in, where we, you know, where we actually introduce as brokers, bankers, and account holders to each other, right? So in that situation, it became so competitive with me at the beginning, and I didn't feel comfortable there. And it got me into a situation where I, you know, basically got put on a list, like, this guy's not going to work it out, you know? So then I put myself in a catalyst position instead, which is introductory and then encouraging of both sides, right? Mm-hmm. So very important here. And I think this is why we got to this today, because it's a challenge for the male, especially. And I mean, the masculine side of a female as well, because there's masculine and feminine in all of us, to put that competition aside, right? So my, you know, completely dispelling government the way that I do and the way I come across and stuff, you know, is that where I have to make a few more adjustments? Like, I do feel, you know, compassionate for these government officials, but maybe I just need to be a little bit more compassionate with them because of their indoctrination and programming. You know, we don't know how in the hell they got into the positions they're in, you know, and I still completely do not agree with the insanity of, you know, what's going on with the, you know, I use the word tyrannical, but at the very least, the mandated restrictions and everything else. I don't agree with any of that stuff, but on the level of the people, the politicians that are in there, that's where compassion needs to come in a little bit more, you know, a little bit more, and just say, look, I don't know how much any of these people know, including Pierre Trudeau's son, Justin. Like, you know, because usually when you get to the top of the ladder like that in a nation, in these corporate governments, then you're saying, oh, that guy knows. How in the hell, besides the idea that Joe Biden could be some kind of a, fake, which I don't even know if I believe anymore. My goodness, there's a perfect example of someone, if that's the real Joe Biden, that, I feel nothing but sorry for that man right now. He is so lost. Like if that's true, let's just put it that way. Just play along with if that's true, because most of the population still thinks that the mainstream media news and what's coming out of, Washington, D.C. and Joe Biden's mouth is true. So goodness gracious, how you couldn't have compassion for something like that. Like the man is just lost. And I don't know, like, so that being said, as far as being the leader, a leader in a mayoralty position, catalyzing somewhere between the city council and the bureaucrats that are going to be, it's going to be laden with them, bureaucrats that have been there forever, not elected officials that are going to expect that things are going to continue along the same way. Accountants and budget makers and everything else, tax included. My belief in all of that stuff would have to be somehow encouraging the change and encouraging the goodness for everyone, including the city of Calgary residents and the bureaucrats and politicians that are in there. So anything else would be, me being a tyrannical dictator, saying, wait a minute here, we're going to dump this, all this stuff. We're going to change all this stuff. So thank you, William. I think that kind of is where we were going, as seems like, and I hope people caught on to that. It's like, when we're in a position of really wanting change to happen, knowing that we were part of the manifestation, number one, that is happening now, and number two, not having a clue how these other individuals got to where they were. So I'll let you speak, and then I got a good example of one encounter I had yesterday, but you go first.
Cool, thank you. Definitely hold that thought. I had a couple of things that came to mind, and that could take us down a completely different tangent, perhaps. I'll mention them, and then you can respond in whichever way you want. If you want to bring this item back, certainly can do that. I thought of two things. One was I thought of Charlie Ward, and something that Charlie says frequently on his shows. And that very simple phrase, he says, it's all pantomime. It's all pantomime. He says that quite often. And that usually comes when he's talking about his intel, from the information that he's getting. And when I hear that, I know for me, I think about, I actually entertain the thought, what if all the government leaders, and this is a little out there, I think, but what if all the government leaders were actually doing this intentionally to wake us up, to make it so unbearable to keep things the way they are, that, they're just pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, such that we have no choice but to wake up, literally. And I wonder how much that is true, because there are times I feel like any moment now someone's going to come on, the TV or whatever emergency broadcast system and just say, "Joke's on you, mankind. This is really what's happening, and this is what's going to happen now from now on," kind of thing, because sometimes it seems so bizarre, so macabre. It's weird sometimes. And the other thought I had, and it was a completely different kind of thought, but you were talking about feeling sorry for Joe Biden. I have some of that feeling too. And it reminded me for some reason, it's a childhood memory, but it was a memory of watching a Charlie Chaplin movie. And Charlie played a very sad, heroic type of figure. And I just remember as a kid watching that movie and really being moved. And but it was in a way that I felt really, really sorry for him, because he was kind of left out in the cold, and he didn't really have a voice for himself. And I couldn't remember much about the movie or anything else, but I just remember it was Charlie Chaplin around the time I was a kid. So, and you know, it's just interesting. So those are the two things that came from what you had to say, and I'll let you respond either with the thing you were holding on to, or responding to either one of those two things.
Sure. Like, I'm tempted to look at a few videos of Joe Biden, and I do, and you know, the mainstream media is making it more and more obvious to us that he's just being directed, right? So never before, I don't think, have we ever seen a politician outright say, like, are you sure you want me to say that? Or can I go now? He's asking his handlers. So and again, we're talking bureaucrats. We're not talking Nancy Pelosi or, like another actor in the game. We're talking about bureaucrats and somebody that's directing him. And they're making that obvious to us right now, this time around. So that's one thing I wanted to say. And then again, that comes with the compassion for his role in this, which is playing out. The other one was that you mentioned Charlie Ward. Well, Charlie and I still message once in a while back and forth, him and I personally. I've actually asked him when he's ready for another show. I'm ready to go on with him. And he sent me something this morning that was, kind of talking about what's going on in Afghanistan, and again, making it look as if Joe Biden was kind of a dumbass and that he's now on the other side and CNN is coming against him. And so what are they going to do? Like, you can't, you're just going to bring Kamala in, now, because you can't just switch sides again and say, well, we need Donald Trump back. So like, there's this weird thing that's going on that front. But from my aspect, I see it as a perfect unfolding and a exposure of past corporate governments that were gangsters, and I'm talking now, prior to Joe Biden for sure, but back in the day of George Bush Sr. running this dark cabal, I'd call it, because all of the Middle East was stories about 9/11, which is coming up really, again, our anniversary. And to say that happened and that was the reason we had to go to Afghanistan and kill all those people and everything, in the end, what did it turn out as? The CIA, Dick Cheney and George Bush and their gangs with the five eyes, they call it, that's a big account in the banking system, taking over these oil fields, stealing a bunch of gold from Saddam Hussein, and more than just gold, taking over the poppy fields of Afghanistan, where all these pharmaceutical as well as off kind of kilter drug deals go through, so I mean, that all is past, right? So I always like to think in terms of, okay, what have we got on our table now? Well, now we've got a poor, pathetic group of individuals that don't have a leader anymore. There's nothing there for them, and they're trying to piece something together that's all falling apart. And is Donald Trump going to be the answer? Well, man, I tried to listen to his thing last night. I couldn't get much out of that except for they're bad. They're the bad guys. I mean, like, that's political rhetoric. So what I see is just that it's an awakening for all of humanity to get into this sense of, we need to take responsibility ourselves and create something new here, folks. And whether, if that's being the mayor in this city, or William taking a different approach to what happens in his day when he runs into someone on the street, or your approach to that, and realizing, you brought that manifestation into your reality by thinking about it, and now it's there for you to deal with. I don't know. It's a really interesting time, guys. And I mean, I'm excited. I know in my heart, from my own experience and my own manifesting of what's happening where I'm at. But can I press that onto someone else? Can I force it into someone else's mind? Do I look like I'm bypassing reality and going into a creation that no one else is there? Yes. People say that to me, like, you're bypassing reality. Well, I don't know how else to do this, like I feel and I know from my own personal experience what's going on, and I try to share that. So if you want, I'll go right into what happened to me yesterday, okay? And it's the happenings that are really cool, because I'm living more like that every day. I don't reach out and seek things. I just allow things to happen and experience and respond to them. So I'm walking downtown, and there's a Muslim community organizing a little bit of a rally, it looked like, but there was tents set up too for, promoting different things. And the first tent there was this Calgary School Board trustee. And he's a Muslim guy. So he's there with this community, getting as much support as he can for his run at this trustee position, right? And I went straight up there and I said, okay, this is cool. I'm running into this situation. I'm going to ask him a couple of questions. And sure enough, he dropped the other guys he was talking to, shook my hand. He wanted to introduce himself to somebody new. And I said, what do you think of this ridiculous notion of, forcing our children to wear masks in schools? And he says, well, he was pretty political and, spinning it around like typical politician. I'm not putting him down, because that's what people do in politics, right? Is try not to answer the question too straight on, or else you're going to get yourself into a judgment situation, right? So he was spinning around a little bit. And I said, well, I really don't believe in any of this stuff. I think the word has gotten into our minds and everybody blew it up on both sides, mainstream media and alternative media, and nobody's really got a handle on this. But I said, do you realize that we have, and I talked about the Pat King case here in Alberta, where we have documented and transcripts of the government officials saying we don't have any proof of the virus, right? So he was kind of shocked. And then there was some younger men standing in front of me, and they were listening to this. And the one guy says, oh my goodness. And I said, yeah, but do you also realize that the word COVID backwards, divik, relates to a Hebrew word which means you've been invaded with an evil spirit? And these guys, they just went, what? And I mean, it's my experience that I'm sharing. I'm not trying to tell them what's going on. I'm just sharing my experience. Man, all three of those young guys shook my hand before I left. I was talking about being the mayor in Calgary again as well, but they all shook my hand, and it was like, wow, I felt so good that I was able to just share experience with them and let them make their own, decisions based on that, including this man who was the trustee or running for the trustee. So that was a good example. And I'm not saying I did it perfectly, but I felt as if I just walked into that experience that I had already manifested part of in my mind and in my reality, and then just acted as consciously as I could. Never went in there saying, you're an idiot if you support this mask mandate or anything like that. It was just, sharing my experience. So hopefully that kind of leads to something else that you've got on your mind.
Well, I was thinking, we talk a lot in sort of generalities, and part of what also crossed my mind yesterday in the meditation was maybe we want to turn a new leaf, maybe going forward from this point, and that is to focus on what we want to create, getting maybe a little more specific, like what could we do? Like we've done a little bit of that already as well. We talked about some of the things that you'd like to see changed. But I was thinking about that a lot, yesterday. I was going, okay, I'll give a specific example so it's a little bit more clear. As a entrepreneur, business person, I have this volleyball league, an adult league, and I work exclusively inside the city of Greater Vancouver. And there's a lot of limitations as far as gym availability outside of the school system. There just there aren't a lot of options, and most of them aren't available. Most of them don't rent out their gyms as well outside of their own group. So really, it's my only choice. But they too also have certain restrictions, and they have certain insurance policies that you have to have, and certain requirements. And then they charge a rent on top of that. And I'm going, so let me get this straight. We've got a school board that we pay, we supposedly pay taxes on, and they manage, the children and the education of the children and all of that. And it's the same. I know in BC, I don't know if it's like this in Alberta, but in BC, there would always be this budget that they would have. And it was always more than what the government was ever willing to give them. And the government will always give them a little bit less. And so then there would be some back and forth and some complaining and some media, posturing and that kind of thing. And then they would, the school would have to get creative. So how to create enough money to cover the so-called budgetary shortfall. And I'm going, this is going to be completely different in the system that you are going to be bringing. And so I guess my first question to you can use the school board example if you want, or you can use something else. But I'm just wondering if you can pick something that we've been used to seeing that will be done completely differently. Do you have any thoughts about that at all?
Yeah, that's a good one, William. And the whole time you were thinking, I was going back to what I would like to see. And I've said what I'd like to see, and been very vocal about the idea of debt being an illusion, and in fact this whole thing that's gone on in the last year being an illusion, or year and a half. But I think that the turning over a new leaf is harmonizing even more, and not trying to drag people into this very out of the box reality that I live in. And even though it's my experience and it's my knowledge and it's my wisdom and it's my intellect and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be difficult to propose some of the things that I've suggested to people. Like, it's almost impossible to, I've been on some kind of chat groups lately with some of the mayoralty candidates there. They come on Facebook, so somehow they've got a way to get onto my Facebook page, and algorithms or whatever it is. So I've been on there, and I've been asking them these questions, and nobody answers at all. And the only answers I get back are like, well, sounds like you never went to high school. or you're a conspiracy nut, or things like that, because they don't know how to respond to me, because I'm so out there compared to anybody else, other than the one guy that there's a guy named Hallelujah, and I think he's talking openly on his stuff about going to space. So he's out there too, but but my stuff is definitely out there for people to even grasp. The idea that debt is completely, especially if you think of at a public level, it's completely insane, lunacy, because there is no such thing. You can't go below zero when you're talking about public debt. It just doesn't work, especially the way the system's set up.
I can obviously tell that, it's still a challenge for me. It's still a challenge for me. Like I was going to say that, your fellow running mates, for lack of a better expression, uh, for the mayoralty race that you were alluding to, that connected with on Facebook. Um, I was thinking, Randall's not only outside of the box, he's outside of the building that's outside of the box. I mean, he's like way out there compared to, just because we've been that indoctrinated. We've grown up with the system, and you have been able to not only step out of the system, or you step back, but you stepped out of the system, and you were able to take a really broad view of where everything is at and see things very differently. And so what I was trying to say at the very beginning, I have so many thoughts going on in this particular episode that I know I'm bouncing all over the place, because I'm just trying to corral them into some sort of logical path here. But what I was thinking about was, I would love for you to be able to share with people a vision, or give them something to be able to go with. But I also realize, again, you reminded me of that with your answer, that it's a in the moment kind of thing. It's a divine creation. It's not something you could say, oh, it's going to look like this, or we're going to go here and we're going to do that. So, I mean, you obviously tell us about the money that everyone will get paid, and there'll be that. But it's hard to say what it's going to be, is what I realized from your last answer, because it's a completely different way of looking at things. You're going to, like you said earlier, you're going to have all the people that have been in the system for so long inside of that old way of thinking, that has to unlearn a lot of things just to be open-minded enough to be able to try to comprehend some of the things that you're talking about and presenting. So, like, you've presented me a really big challenge as an interviewer to try to get a semblance of your vision out to the public so that they can get a sense of where we're going. And after all of that, I don't have a question for you, but I'm just kind of expressing sort of my own challenge or my own frustration in wanting, like, I'm getting a sense of what your thoughts are and your visions are after all of these shows. We're in what, 21, 22 already. And, I kind of absorb what you're saying, and then I'll forget about some of it during the week, and then it'll reabsorb some of the same things plus a few new things. So, is there any way that you can see how this might get started after you were to get elected as mayor officially? Is there any way that you can say about how you would want to start the integration process?
Yeah, very good. I'm thinking in terms of that harmony and respect for the individuals who are still in, a way of thinking that has been indoctrinated and programmed into their minds, right?
Yeah.
It's huge to try and, change that. Huge, obviously. Like, look at the doctors and nurses out there that are holding their ground and saying this is the right thing to do, while so many other ones are just bailing. So on a big picture side, let's just go there for just a second. On the big picture, I'm quite pleased with the way that the pharmaceutical industry and the corporate government industry is imploding. Okay, I'll just say it simply. I'm quite pleased with that, because it does coincide with my way of thinking that, we the people and the comfort of the human beings needs to be before these corporations and these corporate governments, right? Corporations being pharmaceutical industry and corporate government interests, right? Who are lobbied by corporations that are, a lot of them are in that pharmaceutical industry or in a high-tech industry or anything else. So I'm quite pleased with that. And I can see that change from the aspect of being that, broader holistic thinker, if you want to call myself that, or if I want to call myself that. And we've promoted the book a number of times on this video and on other ways. There's only been like a handful of people read that, so that's not going to help us. People aren't going to be able to say, oh, I get what he's saying, because they don't know what I've been through in my life, which the book definitely spells out for years and years of experience and happening in the moment in my life through this journey of being involved in the banking industry at the level that I am. So yeah, it's pretty cool, William, and I'm really enjoying this edition, because it is showing me that, how did I put it? She uses the word bypassing. So she considers me bypassing the reality that's on the table, even though she's a major advocate of change as well. But my going into the realms that I do, she feels as if I'm bypassing. And I come across that way, I admit it. Am I doing it? You damn right. And I'm not going to stop because that's the way I think. So let's bring that big picture stuff, back to the position of being the catalyzing mayor of the city of Calgary, which is going to catalyze the people and the comfort of the people with the corporate interests of the city of Calgary, which is a corporation, run like a corporation, right? So does that make me sound like a socialist? Well, it will in people's minds that don't understand who I am and what I am. And the only way I can stop them from thinking that way, or hopefully stop them from thinking that way, is for me to then say, from my experience, debt is an illusion anyway. So we don't have to think in terms of, okay, we got to choose the new almost $1 billion, like it's $1 billion process that's happening down the hill from my place, where they're building this new trade center on the Stampede grounds, versus a little better comfort for the average Calgarian, or lower taxes for the older people that live in the community down below the hill from me on the other side, that are in these old homes but on high valued land now, so their taxes are up. So here's some real old-fashioned politics talk, right? I would like to help those people to stay in their homes and not be forced out of them by higher taxes, okay? If you're going to think that taxes are involved. But the reason I'm going to do that is because in my mind, I know how the banking system works, and I know how the credit system works. And you're not going to convince me otherwise to say, well, then we're going to have to chop this or chop that. If you want both things, then I know that debt is an illusion and we can have both things. But if we're going to choose something, in my mind, it's the comfort of the city of Calgary people, okay? That's where I would say I'd go first. And don't call me a socialist for thinking that way. I'm thinking that way because I'm human and I love human beings and I love the people of Calgary. Do we need a new trade center just like this? Well, we can put that on hold for a little while, as long as the people are comfortable. That's going to be my thought process. But can we have both? Yes, we can have both, because there is no such thing as debt. So if you can grasp my reality, Mr. Counselor, or Mr. bureaucrat, or whoever's trying to pin me down on something, then I'll try and grasp yours. So let's catalyze this. Let's work together in harmony and move forward.
Is there such a thing as a humanist?
Probably.
Yeah, because maybe that might be, if people need to have a label to put on you, maybe that one will be there, because you can you're definitely saying Calgary people first, and that's the most important thing to you, I dare I say. And you gave me some meat there too, which is kind of cool. You mentioned a little bit earlier on in your comments that you were happy seeing, what was happening with big pharma and some of the big corporations going on. And I was thinking, there's a place for everything. And, for some people, I mean, there are some people that are dependent upon prescription drugs. And I don't mean addicted. I mean, they just need it for their physical conditions. So I don't think you were saying that you would want to see pharmaceuticals completely like disappear and die overnight or something like that, because you still have those folks that rely on some of those maybe lesser known, lesser used, lesser needed medications, but are still needed nonetheless. It's just somehow downsizing, and then maybe even transitioning to other forms if the person is available and open to looking at other ways of dealing with their physical and health issues. Any thoughts or comments about that?
Oh, totally. Like, there are so many remedies out there. You passed me one today concerning this situation that we've got on our hands for the last year and a half. And it's a very simple remedy. And I believe there's lots of remedies out there for that cold and flu bug, as I call it. But there's also remedies for those who think that there's some kind of a genocide going on with a thing like this. Like, I don't believe that either, So again, it's that, common sense, common ground, finding a place and thinking in terms of humanity first and compassionately, whether it's, remedies for the actual, whatever it is, flu, cold, or remedies for, problems that are occurring and side effects from the other thing that's going on. So, and yes, William, I mean, again, going back to the idea that every one of us has been programmed by our own thoughts and from a system. So to say to people, okay, no more, you're not we can't do this pharmaceutical thing anymore. You got to go to the homeopath down the street. That ain't going to happen either. But hopefully by the implosion that's happening in the hospital system and the number of nurses and doctors that are saying they've had enough and are leaving their positions, hopefully that wakes people up to the fact that, okay, there are other options. These doctors are thinking other options, so maybe we should think of other options. And that's the beautiful unfolding that I see, and I can't help saying that enough. And whether that's in Afghanistan with what's going on there with the military that's decided enough is enough, supporting these corporations, walking away from their control over the poppy fields and the oil fields in the Middle East and stuff, that is beautiful as well. That's big picture stuff, and everybody's got their head twisted around. Oh, it's bad Biden doing this, and it's like he screwed up, and CNN is going to go over there. No, let's just bring this into perspective for a minute here and say, it was a bloodless coup. Basically, there's hardly any people that have suffered, and the handing over of power was pretty much easy. So what can you say wrong with that? Like they're actually talking, the Taliban are talking about, more children going into schools without masks, for Christ's sake. That's a pretty cool thing that they're talking about. Like, it's just like when people, used to talk about Gaddafi in such a negative sense. I mean, that man had some wonderful, beautiful ideas for the people. Like, my goodness, if people would just go back to that and relook at what happened and what was going on in Libya prior to, and military intervention there as well. Like, it's all that big picture stuff. And I know that gets, me out there once again, but seeing it unfolding now, and then from my own inside knowledge and inside experience with the groups that I'm involved in at the higher levels of banking, and even in the aristocratic side of this, when I've talked about a little bit, and I don't need to dive into that too much today, but the what I call or what we call the Divine Order of Santa Maria, aristocrats that are harmonizing with and working with the militaries of the world now to say, okay, enough of this corporate agenda. Let's work together with the people down here and the people, if you want to call the aristocrats people up here, to get some of these projects and get some of this comfort to the people. And that part is my own experience. I can't push that on anybody. If you completely think that I'm bypassing reality by talking like that, well, that's your thoughts, I guess. But I mean, it is my reality, and it is physical, it is mental, it is spiritual, and it is beautiful. And I'm so happy to be part of it. And, can I prove anything yet? No, but I know that it's happening. And when it happens, I won't be the guy who said, I told you so. I'm just going to be the guy who says, can I help you now? Okay, because that's where I'm going to go with this, because my position is going to be a helping position rather than, see, I told you,
I can see you sort of saying, now it's time to go.
That's right.
Who's with me? Like, let's jump on board. Let's get on this train and see where it takes us. It's interesting. You said a lot there, and I think we've said a lot in a short period of time tonight, actually. Whether everyone followed us or not, that might be a different story. But at least there was a lot of meat there to chew on. And one of the thoughts I had near the beginning of what you just said in your last answer was you were mentioning how some of the doctors and nurses were leaving their profession because they couldn't accept what was going on right now with the jabs and all of that. And I just got this really cool picture, which you kind of almost said, maybe you did say it and I didn't quite hear it, but I definitely got the picture of they would be the ideal people to first go to and say, okay, we're going to obviously be transitioning the medical system, but you guys are showing that, you do believe in the Hippocratic oath and the, healing people and do no harm. And we want you to help us create something that will be of benefit to people, that will be only for their care, using the knowledge that but also integrating it and bringing in some of those other alternative types of medicines and some of the experts in those areas. Because the one thing, I don't know if this is happening right now or not. I know that like when I was in my early 20s and even in my teens, all that the holistic stuff, the alternative healing was almost like in a closet. It was almost taboo. And it was like, you don't talk about it. You don't bring it up too much. And it's come out more and more. But now it feels like there's an opportunity there for Western medicine to start working with alternative medicine and really creating, an amazing type of holistic healing, health-based type of approach. Any thoughts about that?
Well, again, William, my personal experience there is so biased towards holistic, health that it's not even funny. I mean, I was diagnosed with liver cancer 12, 13 years ago. And I took the approach of holistic. I just went completely away from the pharmaceutical industry, completely, 100%. I still do fasting. I'm on a day one of a 4-day fast. I do it every month. And that's what I would term holistic, like looking after my immune system and my health by myself without, the pharmaceutical or even over the counter, kind of methods of cleansing, which are out there. You can cleanse with all kinds of over the counter shelf bought and things from natural food stores and stuff like that. My cleansing is just completely water, like for 4 days, and I do it once a month, just because I want to feel how good I feel every time I do it. And every time I do it, I feel even better. So not saying I'm reverse aging or anything, but by God, I'm in good shape. And I mean, it's due to that choice. But, you know, going back to the nurses and doctors for a second, there's so many. And I mean, there's so many that are taking it to the legal aspect and going to courts over this stuff. But those three ladies that visited Calgary about 3 weeks ago, and I went down and listened, and it was a rally, you know. I wouldn't call it a protest rally because it was just a rally. And these ladies were so conscious and so talking about how, and the one was a holistic health practitioner as well as a nurse. So she had the most to say, and she really presented the alternatives and the creation or co-creation of what we could see in the future in the healthcare industry. And as the other aspect of it continues to implode, I'm so encouraged by ladies like that, or these doctors that are out there that are saying, okay, even if you're gonna stay in the allopathy zone, then come with us on the choice side rather than these mandates and stuff like that. So, you know, I am so encouraged, William. And the other thing I wanted to mention as far as the mandating, you know, a lot of that is why these healthcare practitioners in the allopathy industry are leaving, is because they're being mandated to do this, right? Mandated to do this. And, you know, they want their own free will and their own choice. And I was a little bit shocked this week. An old banker friend of mine, and this is a guy who I, you know, never locked horns with, but he was one of the top nuts with ATB here in Alberta, and he's semi-retired now. I think he still does some consulting. No use mentioning his name, but very high level official with Alberta Treasury Branch. And he said that on a post on LinkedIn that he was so proud of RBC because RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, was going to mandate all of their employees to have that. And I thought, holy cow, like, you know, that's going to tear apart the banking industry too, and every other industry where people are going to just damn well leave rather than take that, you know. And, you know, I can see that happening. And too bad for RBC is all I can say if they do something that ridiculous. But I never was a big fan anyway in the start. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Yes, I did.
Yeah. Sorry, I had something in my eye there.
Yeah.
Well, we're just about at the end of our show. We've definitely gone all over the place. We've covered a lot of ground. We talked about a lot of things. I was tempted to ask you about the Santa Maria project, but you alluded to it a little bit, and that you did mention that, you know, that might be something for us to dig into even further next week. But is there anything else this week that you'd like to touch upon before we wrap up the show?
I think we're pretty good, William. Like, you know, for those of you who are watching along, I encourage you to take a look at this, or at the very least, take a look at the idea that the Queen of England was not the only monarch, that there are numerous aristocratic bloodline families around the world, like 300 alone in Russia. And these aren't all directly related to the last Tsar, but some of them are. Okay, so we're talking, what's his name? Nicholas Romanov was the last Tsar. But there's numerous other families in that Northeastern European or Russian realm, and they're spread all over the earth. You know, they don't function in the same world as we do. There's no doubt about that. You know, upper level families that have, you know, more wealth than anybody in the legal jurisdiction that we talk about, which is like, you know, Bill Gates or the pharmaceutical companies and stuff like that. Those are, you know, liquid flowing corporations, right? Where these families sit on ancient off-ledger wealth. And I've said this numerous times, and maybe people don't want to even accept it or believe it, but it's true. And and I don't want to even use the word sit on, because then it sounds as if, oh, well, they should leave it, let it go. They've been in the position of having that blocked by a banking system and by a world order that was trying to limit that and trying to create order, from chaos sometimes, but but it's generally has been that way for quite a few years. But that kind of ridiculousness is fading away fast. So I think we'll end it there for now. And please, take a look at some of this aristocratic family member kind of ideas at the very least, or open your mind to it and be ready for it if you like. If not, that's fine too. But like I say, I feel and know from my personal experience, once again, just like I had personal experience with liver cancer, my personal experience in the banking industry today is dealing with these aristocratic families, as well as the banking families that were trying to manipulate and exploit the flow. So I think we can end it.
Okay, we can end it with that one. Because that brought up a bunch more questions for me, but we will save those for next week. You can tell me a little bit more about how that all ties in. But Randall, yeah, it's been a journey today, that's for sure. We've covered a lot of ground, but I'd love for you to conclude our episode with one of your great blessings. And I thank you for your time once again, and for listening to me. I had a lot to share today too.
Well, the way that we program our own minds is reprogram with our own words. Instead of listening to media outside, find some words like with peace, harmony, love, abundance, and freedom for everyone and everything every day. Find your own words like that and do that repetitively and reprogram your mind into that idea of abundance, sovereignty, health, love, and euphoria. Thank you, William. I love you, brother.
Thank you, Randall. Bye.
See ya.